Mark Rogers TV talking Tennessee football. We bring in Mike LaValle from Last Word on college football. And Mike, this was the week to get healthy, not just physically healthy. This was the week to get the swag back, to get the mojo going against UMass. And 17-13 just doesn't get the job done.
Yeah, Mark, after a disappointing finish to the Florida game where Tennessee came back in the second half and thought they had tied it there at the end, you would have liked Tennessee to have come out against UMass fired up, come out and execute well against a team that can only be described as not very good. At best, they're the 120th best team in FBS. They're 0-4, haven't really had any good losses. Just physically outmatched everywhere across the board against a much more talented Tennessee team. And, so that's exactly what you want. You want the team to come out, fix some things, execute well, show up mentally, show up emotionally, and get the win and move on. Obviously, that did not happen against UMass. The team came out, and they just weren't. Just didn't seem like they were there mentally and emotionally. That there wasn't a lot of physical miscues. Quentin Dormady had a fumble, one drop pass late in the third quarter. But as far as physically, there wasn't a lot of miscues. They just weren't sharp. They just weren't sharp in the execution department. They just weren't sharp mentally or emotionally. It was a very disappointing effort for Volunteer fans to see after they dropped yet another disappointing loss to the Florida Gators.
So, Mike, I'm going to take a little bit different angle, and you know your team and you know the personnel and the breakdown, and you watch the game. I saw 2 highlights and saw the final score, but I am not surprised by a letdown when a big team is coming off a big game, whether that be an excruciating loss like Tennessee suffered, or if they had won in the swamp and had the letdown because of the big win against the big opponent, and then, wow, big deal, we're playing UMass. So I understand the letdown emotionally and in terms of preparation. And again, whether that's off an emotional high or an emotional low, being let down the next week because the opponent just doesn't bring the name or the value. But once it becomes a sluggish game through the second quarter and into the third quarter, typically you see the much better team kick it into gear at some point. And yeah, it's a one-score game in the third quarter, and then suddenly it's 44-14 final. And that just didn't happen in this game.
Yeah, and if you go back and look at the social media the conversations during the game, and if you talk to a lot of people who were in the stadium at the game, a lot of people halfway through the third quarter were thinking, Tennessee's going to come out, just another drive or two. They'll put together 3 or 4 scoring drives, similar to Indiana State, and they're going to win this game by 3 or 4 touchdowns. But when you have a line of 28 and you have a team, if you're coming off a big win or if you're coming off a disappointing loss and you're playing a team that has a couple of really good athletes, maybe a star quarterback or a great wide receiver or, special teams guru that can run a punt or back or a kickoff back, you can understand a game with a 28-point spread being a little bit closer, maybe 14 or 21 points. You can understand that. But when you're playing a team like UMass, and this is not to disparage UMass, but a team that doesn't really have one of those star players and is literally outmatched talent-wise, size-wise, and athleticism-wise across the board at every single position, there was just no real reason for the game to be that close, much less that much of a letdown from what it should have been. Again, that's not to disparage UMass, but the fact of the matter is they're at best the 120th best team in the FBS. Just no excuse whatsoever for Tennessee to be that close to UMass at the end of the game.
And when you look at the rushing statistics, which typically speak to dominance at the line of scrimmage or lack thereof, you can understand not being sharp in the passing game or some other things. But when you're physically the much better team and you average 3.5 yards per carry with a guy leading the charge with 25 of the 39 carries in John Kelly, who's known to be an effort guy, versus a UMass rushing attack that was not awful against the Tennessee defense at 144 rushing yards and 3.9 per carry. That speaks to sheer effort and not not getting after it at the point of attack.
Yeah, most certainly. You know, that's a key statistic, the number of rushes John Kelly had. You know, in a game like UMass, one of your goals as a coaching staff is to get a lot of your backups in and get them meaningful playing time in a no-kidding actual game. And when you have to rely on your starters to go the whole distance and you don't get meaningful snaps for your backup receivers, your backup running backs, particularly on a team with as little depth at running back as Tennessee has. There's a couple talented guys behind John Kelly, but you know, they're both freshmen. So you don't really want to have to go into the SEC, the meat of the SEC schedule, Georgia, Alabama, LSU coming up without your top guy. So you want to get John Kelly in there. You want to get him out in the third quarter. Let Ty Chandler and Carlson Fields and me get in there and finish that second half of that game. And they weren't able to do that. They weren't able to do that at the running back. They weren't able to do it at wide receiver. And they certainly weren't able to do it in the secondary or the defensive line. So you know, one of the bad things among the many bad things from the UMass loss is that Tennessee didn't get a chance to get some of their backups meaningful playing time. And, you know, that's going to come back. That could come back to haunt them in October, November when they get late in the season and you have to rely on your depth to win some close SEC games.